I would say you de-risk the company and you increase the chance of hitting really big numbers by bringing in a head of sales or a head of marketing that is not from the industry. Because we're going to be curious. And what you don't want, what you're not wanting is your marketing to sound just like everybody else's.
Welcome to Ready Set Exec, the podcast where we sit down with executives across North America to unpack their business, leadership, and expertise.
And every other week, join us for Market Watch, all things hiring, real insights and no fluff. Hey everyone, I'm here with Kurt Ehrler, CMO, growth operator, and company builder, who designs integrated systems that turn marketing into scalable growth engines. He has led growth across a dozen industries and 60 corporate transactions. And as CMO of Easy Home Search, drives enterprise-wide brand, demand, and B2B2C growth using data, applied AI, and systems thinking. One of the few marketing leaders named on 20 plus patents, Kurt brings deep technical credibility to go-to-market strategy and serves on the board of CEO Netweavers. Good to have you on the pod today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
All right. So one of the things we're talking about was obviously you've been involved in a lot of transactions. You've had to build a hyper growth and a scalable system you can use when you're working with all these startups, right? How do you set up all your leading indicators, your OKRs? How do you set up basically a system that's going to help them scale, right? What are some missteps that you've seen? What are some things that you definitely could give as for founders that are out there listening right now in terms of like what they're getting wrong or what they need to really think about when scaling? Because all we hear about is leads, pipeline, right? Give me the waterfall.
Yeah.
Find me a demand gen marketer. I mean, this is just cliches I hear every day.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think it comes down to probably three things. The first is companies they think they're ready to scale. But your point about like with founders is they're still working with founder-led heroics or a limited leadership team of heroics. So they'll have maybe even a CRO that's in there or one or two salespeople that are just killing it, but it's not repeatable. They do not have it actually figured out yet how to transfer their knowledge and their capabilities to somebody else. And they're actually not ready to truly scale yet. And so to your point, like you can throw as many leads, but those people are going to burn out or they're going to churn out. So that's one of the things. The next thing that I get to is, I think there's a big difference between growth mode. So what you kind of pointed out, where a lot of people step forward and they say, hey, we need to start adding more people to the team. Like when you add people, spend more hours, you said it just burns out and you have diminishing returns for every one of those that you add in. Scale mode is about building the systems that create leverage and compound over time. So that it's not just add one person, increase by X number of dollars. It's add one person and increase by 1.5% what you were the previous people. The third piece is, to your point about the waterfall, they're tracking things on lagging indicators or things that are so near term. And if you're going to get to real scale, the founders, the board have to shift to leading indicators. Now, not that you shouldn't be driving demand gen, which is going to be something that maybe pushes, first of all, most demand gen when they say that, the average founder and even the average marketer has no idea what that looks like today. To them, it's add money into Google or some sort of a ABM platform and just get, a little bit more than that out the other side. Real demand gen is about building trust at scale. And so it's not just an ROI in the ads. It's how do you build trust momentum over time? And so it's starting to think about splitting that investment into 2 to 6 months, maybe 12 months to 36 months and 36 months plus. And you don't have to just put in dollars and hope. You can do leading indicators, but it may mean that you're not going to drive sales right away.
No, and that totally makes sense. And it's always kind of the internal fight between brand versus short-term quarterly top-line revenue, right? Like everyone's looking at their ARR and all that, and what are we going to be doing with a lot of channels? Like I see also in terms of the channels being used and the tactics, that's changed a bit because now we have AI being a big part of search. Right. With AEO and GEO being a new thing where we have to be mindful of that. Google ads are not working as well as they used to, cold email deliverability and so on. Like there's the common things that the pain points we're seeing in the market in terms of things that used to work very easily. You just put quarters in the arcade machine of Google ads and you get leads come out, right? It's not like that anymore. So with your scalable systems, have you adapted to these new tactics or is it more of like from a strategy point that hasn't changed and the tactics change often?
That's a great question. I have not had to adapt because the most marketers are not capable of, they haven't been trained about how to do demand gen. And so to your point about like, what does that look like trust building is different. And so like somebody wrote an article that they feature me and Courtney, a former CMO that I'd worked with as well, about how like 99% of go-to-market teams are not even capable of modern demand gen today. And so I just say that in terms of, if you go back even just like 2 years or 5 years ago, most marketers, like in the SEO space, they were writing top of the funnel content and they were getting a lead. So they were getting somebody to fill out a form, download an ebook or something. And then they were just hammering those people with ads or calls from the sales team. That's not demand gen. Demand gen is, I don't know who your brand is. Somebody else told me about it, or I heard your brand 1 time or 12 times, and I'm seeking you all out. And the reason that that's the different, and then this does come down to like, does your CFO and your board understand what the data says? Forrester, Gartner, they all look at this and say, if you go back over the last 15 years, before we got into this the new area we are with artificial intelligence, if you were not the number 1, 2, or 3 in a large established industry, you lost 70% of the deals because there's a trust factor. Don't call it brand. CFOs don't care about brand. So if you were the 5th player to the CRM market, if you were the 12th player, you were losing 70% of the possible deals to one of the top players because you didn't have the trust. Marketers say brand, but what it really comes down to is if you're not in consideration, losing 7 out of 10 deals that fill out a form on your website, that's horrible. Demand generation has always been, hey, I'm going to create middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel content, which is what the large language models love. So when your contact is out there profiling their new CRM system, the new marketing automation system, and they're just talking to Perplexity, they're not talking to your team yet. That's the same content that good marketers were doing back in the past. And so when I create that content, I've already solved everything that the large language models need to help guide you through that conversation. But most marketers never knew how to do that, not just because they only thought in terms of keywords, but they never spoke to their sales team to find out what conversations were actually taking place. They never talked to the product team to find out what people were actually using or what problem they were trying to solve. Marketers lived in their own little world. And so I haven't had a change. A lot of others haven't, but I'd say 99% of the marketers out there, they're freaking out because they're just saying things changed. And I'm like, that at the end of the day, our revenues are actually going up more and more because the large language models love the content we've created for decades at the companies I've been at.
Can you give us maybe some examples of the types of content that, a startup SaaS company or professional services company, what kind of content should they be focusing on right now for 2026?
Yeah. So great question. So one of the companies or the company I'm at right now is basically a Zillow group competitor, Easy Home Search. And so we have this huge B2B component selling to real estate agents, home service providers. We also have subsidiaries. Like we're just rolling out a new CRM product right now within the industry. So you go, okay, if you were a real estate agent that had a team of 20 productive agents and you're wanting to change CRMs, what questions are going through those people's minds? They're not out there just typing, what's the best, real estate CRM? They're out there saying, I have a team of 20 agents. How do I coach them to be more productive? That's a question that they're actually asking. They're asking, hey, now that the CRM I'm using has been acquired by a competitor in the market to who you are as a brokerage, should I be concerned about data sharing and how my data is used within that company? That's a deep question that 99.9% of marketers were not even capable of asking their team, much less writing content on. And so that's content, even though we're just rolling out that subsidiary this month, that's something that we've been writing content on and speaking about in the market for the last 6 months already to get that out there, because that's conversations that's what the decision makers are struggling with. What's the conversations of the people that have invested in those local boutiques saying, hey, do we want to go with an all-in-one or build our best of breed tech stack? That's a very detailed question that the standard marketer within any of those brokerages are not asking.
No, that makes sense. It's like digging a little bit deeper, understanding your customer, putting yourself in your customer's shoes. We used to have a thing like this called the Ben Duffy questions. You'd write down 10 questions you expect your customer to bring up to you in a sales call and have the answers and questions written down for yourself to practice on and integrate that into your sales pitch, right? So similar type mindset of, it's funny how old school sales tactics are still valid today because people haven't changed, right? Maybe our tech around us and everything has, but the way we relate to things, the way we see our world is largely the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's also the reason why the founder who's been able to go from 0 to 5 million, 0 to 10 million, while they can do really well in the sales call and close an incredible amount of deals because they can pivot in real time without actually even thinking about how they're changing for that conversation because they have often created a company based on the problems that they had. That's very different than hiring salespeople that either have that knowledge themselves or are curious to ask the questions before they get on the calls or afterwards. I mean, as a marketer, I mean, what do I do initially when I come into a company in the first 90 days? Hey, it's a $50 million company, $100 million a year in ARR. The first thing I actually want to do is make sure the sales team's comfortable with me calling 20 people who have said no to us or have churned. And not to resell them, but I want to actually, I'm curious about why. And I would love for those people to be my friends to know what went on in not just their perception of our company, but what else is going on in their lives. Like, hey, I will buy you and your partner a dinner just to take an hour-long call with me because that's so valuable. And I won't try to resell you to come back to the company. Nobody thinks like that anymore today. But that's what worked 15 years ago. That's what works today. And that's what you have to build systems to either get the knowledge initially, teach other people from a coaching perspective, or have it and then create basically internal onboarding that walks every marketer through. I should be able to take a social media manager that only does social media for a B2B company and walk them through all the questions like that you would typically ask or you would expect a good salesperson to ask. And they should be able to answer them with like 80 to 90% accuracy like that without thinking about it.
Yeah,
You
no, it
can't do
makes sense.
that. You don't have a system in place.
I think in addition to that is the integration, maybe let's say the synergy between marketing, product, dev, sales, everybody talking to each other too, like not being siloed, right? Like you want to have that feedback loop, right? Where the product people are coming back with feedback, or the CX team. Like if you're not talking to your CS team too, customer success, right? That you're getting that feedback in real time and you're iterating on things. A lot of times people are sort of siloed there. No one wants to admit when there's a mistake. It was actually pretty funny. I was talking to a go-to-market person that is working for a SaaS company. We had a conversation on the podcast, and they were mentioning how the collaboration that they have on their team was so high, and that's really nipped a lot of problems in the bud before they grew because everyone felt safe to be able to admit when there's a mistake, there's something happening wrong in their department. Normally they'd want to just say, oh, it's sales fault, right? Or it's the marketer's fault or something, instead of saying, no, product, we have an issue, and so they'll say that to everyone else in the team, and they'll be able to use that to collaborate together to find solutions and adjust. We're not going to market the new feature because it's not ready yet, right?
Right.
So I think that also maybe part of it is using those, we call them old school techniques maybe, but really it's just understanding your business and building, as you said, that kind of framework where if we could only download the founder's brain into everybody else, then it'd be helpful, but you can't. So you have to create a system for that, right? Where there's training and onboarding.
Right. I mean, as much as I speak about leadership, I hate so much of the leadership styles we see that's, like matrix teams. Like, oh my gosh, just like if not that that's a problem, it's just don't use that in the corporate environment. But at the end of the day, I do like the concept that says at the end, the perception of the customer, like that is something that belongs to all of us. It should not, it's a problem when it's owned individually, to your point of being siloed. If it should be owned by anybody, I take very much more the Steve Jobs approach that says there's like only two people that can stop a product before it rolls out the day beforehand. It's, it's either Steve Jobs in that case when he was alive or anybody with a marketing title, because he believed that marketing was somebody's never heard of your brand or company, so they've been paying you reoccurring money for at least 10 years. And I like that because at the end of the day, I kind of think of it the council approach. It says, hey, look, product does have, and they should have a very valid viewpoint of what the customer's day-to-day life is and other things that they're doing. So should sales, so should marketing. But at the end of the day, like when somebody churns out, did our product fail? Did our sales oversell it, to your point? Or did marketing perhaps set up even a bad perception with some press release or social media post that created a false expectation that we couldn't deliver on because we did not intend to as a company to deliver on it? At the end of the day, that's all the marketing perception there. And it's like, I do think like it's marketing's job, if I was going to give to anybody, to make sure that we're all in vehement agreement of who our customer is. And you mentioned like customer success. Like I fight for customer success partially because like I want to at least own as much of their data as possible, because I find sales teams, they often treat customer success as actually just how do we upsell and reduce churn. And that's important. By all means, we can fight about who owns the budget number, but they have the best data on what's actually going on with the customer. And so are they using the product? Are they not? What else are they doing? And so it's like, that's the most valuable thing, to actually making sure we have ground truth reality for who our customer is.
No, it totally makes sense. And just to talk about a real life example, something you've done with the real estate portal, right? You took it from a non-ranking website, one of the top real estate portals out there in the US. You want to maybe talk about some of the things now? Obviously, you've already sort of iterated on or discussed a little bit about it, but give us that journey from going from zero to, I don't know, millions of views or impressions and so on.
Yeah,
But
I've done that now twice. I did it both at EXP Realty, which is now the largest brokerage in the US, and then now at Easy Home Search, and in very different ways. I mean, how we did it here at Easy Home Search was like, we literally went out and we had a different product, and we thought the experience would be better, but we started going out to talk to, in that case, consumers about what are you looking for buying a home, and then we started asking questions that we knew the answer to, but we didn't think most consumers necessarily knew the answer to, and we needed to find out, did it resonate? And what we found out in that case was, like, you go on and start testing, and it's like, okay, most people go and they say, I'm looking for homes. So they start filling something out. So we ask questions about, do you know what happens with your data when you fill out that form on an average site? And people are like, I have no idea. And we're like, well, how valuable do you think that data is? And they're like, I don't know, like $10, $20, like, kind of people know they're all a lead at the end of the day. We're like, on average, those big portals get $1,000 on average for providing your name and budget information to somebody. People are just like, they freak out. Like, my wife told me, like, we do in-person things, and she's like, you can't ask like our friends this question because it changes the entire barbecue or something at that point. People had no idea. And we're like, well, think about this. If you were going to move a $2 million IRA or 401k from Fidelity to somewhere else, how much do you think somebody would pay to know you were going to do that in the next 60 days? And they're like, that seems very valuable. Okay. So if you live in New Jersey and you're buying a $2 million house, how much do you think that that's worth? And then people realize. And so we had already been building the first privacy focused version, but when we tested that and we found out what people are actually concerned about that the industry wasn't talking about, things just fundamentally changed. And to your point about leading indicators, we could watch in our data that it wasn't just like our leads, our ads, or organic. We would see people go and type our name as a no-name company at that point into Google or into Perplexity, because they're like, I want to know more about that.
no, I mean, it's good to know who's thinking about you, who's build your ICP sometimes through that data. Like, it's important to sort of understand your customer, right? And how, and their mindset, like how they approach the problem.
Yeah.
I think it's something a lot of customers, they build it, like, and this is kind of a common thing I've seen anyways from a recruiter standpoint, is we talk to a founder who's an engineer. They're like, oh, it's so cool. It's the best tech. I got the patents. It's the best tech, right? And then they hit a wall where it's like, okay, it may be cool factor, but it's not always the best tech that actually sells. That's the thing, right? What hits that customer pain point gets ease of use. There's like so many little factors that can be like, snap your fingers and it's adopted. Like, for me, I think about all these new soft drinks, right? Like Bubble, Bubble or Boobly, whatever. I don't know how you even pronounce it anymore. But that's huge. And how did it get so big? And it's like it struck a chord. The flavor, it's small little things that can make a great experience for a customer, that you get the referrals then, right? You just build that referral machine for you. Word of mouth is huge for a lot of products, right? So
yeah, I think to your point about like the technology, too often I see companies and they'll start to cap out at somewhere between like 5 and 25 million a year in revenue, because what they built was a really good feature, but a feature of a bigger company. Like, it's never going to become a $200 million, $500 million company. Now, you can make that pivot if you have figured things out and you've been banking profitability. But if you have not thought about it ahead of time, like, true technology that's really good for solving a big problem can be wonderful. I mean, I had a family office brought me in, and they were a small company at the time from a revenue perspective, but the main partner at the family office was like this company's been around for like 17, 18 years, and their technology is 2 orders of magnitude better than anything in the industry. I don't understand why they can't close deals. And it was in the marketing tech space, and we went and looked at it, and like, no, it really was. And it was solving a big problem that, drove millions of dollars for the customers that adopted it. they had no idea how to sell it. And what they'd done is they had brought in, to your point about like who is around the person in the system. They had a founder who built great technology and was from the industry, and they kept bringing in people from the industry. So their marketing their go-to-market strategy sounded just like everybody else's. I was not in that industry. So I came in curious. I do love no technology, but to ask questions from the outside and say, this is what's been repeatable in 5 other industries we've worked in. Let's try something that is going to feel very different to you. And the leading indicators just started to work right away. And it's like that company grew during COVID like crazy as well. And so when everybody else was crashing. And so good technology can be there, but you have to have a real problem for it to be meaningful.
No, I get that. And it sort of begs my next question about building, marketing teams. And I'll just give you some, let's say, insider experience as a recruiter in marketing. What we tend to see, and not to say they're always wrong, but it can be a problem at times where you're going to a company and they're like, we need a CMO. We need a head marketer, right? Their feedback usually is, okay, find us someone in industry from a competitor that's done the same thing for 5 years and can come and replicate it here for us, right? Yep. That's the safe bet, low risk tolerance. They're worried about someone out because our industry is so special. Everyone thinks their industry is so special. I mean, we're one of a kind. No one's like us. I get it. You're so special. Okay. So we go and try to find these unicorns that they've created in their mind. And sometimes we're able to do that because if it's a big industry, sure, you have your competitors. You may be overpaying for some of them, but that's what you want. Okay. In other cases, we're trying to bring in people with those functional skills where we're like, listen, you're in legal tech. Well, we can bring a SaaS marketer. We can bring someone from another professional services. They don't have to be in legal tech to come and work for you. Right. Because the playbook that they're using is the same playbook in prop tech or whatever. They know that. Or the prime conversation that'll forever be in my mind was meeting with a Windows manufacturer, and they're like, "We want someone that's marketed Windows, like real framed Windows, right?" And I was like, "Listen, there's no one in Wyoming that does Windows." There's just nobody. I can get you someone from, I think in Cleveland, I had someone from the Windows industry in marketing. Right. How about we get someone that's marketed a B2B business product because it was B2B. They were selling to the retailers, right? How about a B2B building products or build B2B products marketer that knows how to market a B2B product? They're going to have outside experience. So from your own perspective, for founders listening that are maybe stuck on that mindset, what would you tell them from having that, your range of experience and so on? What would you say to them that they have that mindset coming to me and asking me to find their unicorn for them?
Great question. So having been very successful in 11 industries, helping in every one of those make people billions of dollars, you think you're de-risking by trying to get somebody from that industry, and you're actually increasing the risk of your company, especially today. The risk. Especially today, not just with AI, but with how we're seeing all technology continue to increase that much more. Especially if you're the founder from the industry, or you have 1 or 2 other leaders in the company that are really strong from the industry, I would say you de-risk the company and you increase the chance of hitting really big numbers by bringing in a head of sales or a head of marketing that is not from the industry. Because we're going to be curious. And what you're not wanting is your marketing to sound just like everybody else's. You don't want your sales team to reach out with the exact same message. It's one thing if you're wanting to just grow. Hey, I'm simply trying to hit this number in the next, 6 to 18 months and sell the company. That's a different risk profile. But if you're wanting real growth, or especially getting into scale, you want people that are going to bring in not just technology, but they're going to bring in systems. So you need a marketer that may have actually not been a marketer until like the previous 8 or 10 years. Like they may have been a lawyer or a software architect. They think in terms of systems. They like right now, you should go ask any CMO that you're doing or that you're talking to, how many AI platforms are you paying for personally? And how many are you experimenting with? Like, I have another friend in the retained search space. Like he kept telling me I needed to try this new AI Manus. Seems great, except for I'd have to pay them $2,000 a month to not tap out on credits for my usage as one of the platforms that I use. And so it's like those are all personal dollars. And so you want somebody who is going to come in that's a system, has a bias towards action, that can speak in terms of financial literacy. They can talk to your CFO in a way that the CFO understands the leading indicators to the point when, like when I ask for budget, I say, hey, I'm wanting to do an enterprise SEO plan, and here's what I want, and I want $5 million for it. And I've had a CFO at a public company come back and go, how about we start you with 6, and if the indicators are where you think they're going to be in 3 months, I'll give you another $1 million in the first year. That doesn't happen to get to do basically an enterprise SEO play. But I speak in terms that it's a risk reward basis that the CFOs understand. That's who you want. You can teach them all the terminology for windows. How do you sell framed windows in Wyoming or across the country? Like that's easy.
No, I mean, hey, I can appreciate that, and it's definitely a customer education piece in terms of like knowing what you guys do and how you guys do it. I think that's a big misalignment between CEOs and CMOs right now. There's that misalignment of expectation of what you guys even do anymore. It's there's a lack of education, I think, too, and a lot of CMOs maybe are not advocating as much for the programs through the lens of the CFO lens. And like you really have to have a lot of that built-in education piece of like, we're doing this because XYZ, and
Right. Well, I think the
because
CEO needs to realize too, especially when they're talking to like your firm and they're saying, hey, who should you bring as a slate of candidates? By all means, always consider 1 or 2 people from the industry. Like you want a bar to weigh people against.
Yeah.
But so many CMOs specifically, and even CROs, they have accepted that they're going to be looking for a new role every 18 months because they're not capable of having boardroom level, CFO level discussion and actually talking with their CEOs in a business oriented, non-marketing oriented way. So most of the people that they're going to be interviewing are just thinking like I'm going to basically be here for 18 months and I'm going to be gone. Well, that's not who you want. Like that may happen, but that's not who you don't want that mentality initially. And the second part of it comes down to is like, okay, at the end of the day, do you expect that to flow down? Like if your CMO comes from your industry and has all this knowledge that you want, do you think every person underneath them? No. Would you rather have them to have the industry knowledge, or would you rather them to have the institutional knowledge about what growth actually looks like and the track record of coaching and training their team? Because at the end of the day, I'm also not going, unless you just give me a blank check, I cannot always hire A players, but I create A players on my team because I know that my team is never going to be able to outperform the capabilities of of the people that are my team, my managers, my individual contributors. So you look at my background, you look at backgrounds of people I would recommend and say, they're all going to say, look, I can give you names of 12 people that have worked for me that have been promoted faster in the decade after working for me because of what they learned working for me. And they would come back today if I said I had an opening. That's the person you want, because as you build out the team, they're going to teach the people what needs to be there. And you as the CEO that knows the industry, or if you have a head of sales that knows the industry, like that terminology is great. Hey, I've never worked in healthcare, but I'd have no problem going to healthcare, and I guarantee I'll be successful because the regulatory side is really easy. The lawyers keep you true to that. The sales team can keep you true to that. But I've also seen how most, healthcare technology companies market. I'm like, yeah, it's better than nonprofits, but it's not that great.
Yeah. No, and I think it's like bringing in the tools from industries that are adjacent and so on. Like I think one place that I can remember was bringing in someone from SaaS and putting them into a commercial cleaning business.
Yep.
You're like, commercial cleaning. I'm like, yeah, because they're using the same kind of process in terms of generating leads as a SaaS company. And so that playbook would work there, and it did. And
it's reoccurring revenue and reducing churn and setting realistic expectations that you can over deliver on.
There you go. So, but yeah, it's definitely an ongoing education piece. I think everyone needs to up their game in terms of like being able to manage upwards, we call it, right? Managing upwards a little bit. And you're right, being able to bring someone in that's able to develop and mentor and coach the team is a multiplication effect to the business, right? Like you're building succession planning, you're doing all sorts of things to strengthen the team. I mean, that's a huge value that you may not see on the top line revenue number, but it actually adds up when you have people that are more productive, and also retention for the company. Like people don't quit, they quit their manager. So if they have a good manager, they're going to stick around. I mean, So I can appreciate that piece of being something that they often overlook is like, can they coach? Can they train? Are they going to take the time to do that? Or are they just here, as you said, 18 months, make a couple bonuses and then move on to the next gig and hope they get a raise by jumping ship in 2 to 3 years or something, right?
Right. Everything you said, and I would add to that, to the point about like them adding risk to the company when they hire somebody from the industry. It's everything you said and the resilience to both capitalize on when the market has opportunities and not fall as much as the rest of your competitors will when things shift as well. And
Yeah.
so like look at COVID. Like the people that the data is coming out that says the people that did really well from a leadership perspective were people that were in different industries that had been brought into an industry during COVID. Like there's a book by, gosh, I think it's David Epstein. It's called Range. It's why generalists outperform the individual exceptionalist. And it's like, well, yeah, that he brings all this research that says like the CMO that comes from different industries that has a diverse background is going to be way better than the person that's just really good at Google Ads. And it's like not that they shouldn't be there, but they're also going to be able to perhaps step in and close sales calls, or they could play as a product person, not as well as the CPO could, but they have that capability to be able to that broad range because one, it's their curiosity that has those conversations ongoing that they naturally have.
I guess it also depends on the stage of the company, right? If you're an early stage startup, having those Swiss Army knife type people is such a huge boon to you. Like you get so much value and people are willing to wear many hats, put in the time and so on. So like there's that extra. I mean, I've definitely seen it before. I'm doing 5 roles, HR, everything goes to HR, everything goes to marketing, everything goes to ops. Like they're just piling it on, right? Whoever's capable that can handle the stress and iterate on all these things. One of the things I want to bring up too is, you've been in, let's say, over 60 corporate transactions, and that includes like M&As and fundraising and all that kind of thing. What are some lessons you've seen that you can sort of speak to in terms of like major transition growth, creating clarity and so on, going to 2026, what do you see in terms of things we got to be doing better?
Yeah, I think growth is one thing. I mean, I can imagine much of the requests that you get for finding leaders is all just focused on growth. And how do we grow by 10% next year, 20% next year? Which that's important, but it's one thing for growth. It's another thing to know how to prepare a company for a successful exit, and not necessarily knowing when that's going to happen, but also being able to my experience, bringing in a head of marketing and a head of sales where they both have done transactions before and they're fully capable from a maturity perspective of hearing from the board and the CEO about the real expectations for an exit. I say that because I've been brought into companies where because of the major investors return on their portfolio time, like they have to have an exit in the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
At other cases, like they're at the early stage and they're maybe not even starting to return things yet. And so they have no problem having other investors coming in or re-upping. And so they may prefer to have an exit that starts in 24 to 36 months. But if they were to ride for 5 years, that's still within the window. Like as a marketer, I need to know that so that we can have real conversations. And that's something from an M&A perspective. And I've been on both sides of the table a lot, and I've been on a lot of boards. Like the more that your senior leaders, you can be transparent with them that says, here's the real expectations, and let's have a discussion at all levels of the company that starts to split up, whether it's in marketing or product, that conversation that says, where are we investing dollars that will pay out in the next, like in the 2 to 12 months, the 12 to 36 months, and 36 months plus. And that's the first discussion that should be had at every level across the company. And then you can start talking about the strategies to accomplish the goals within those. Like that's the first thing that I see that's lacking in almost all companies when they're bringing on new leaders, that ends up leading to a huge loss of value at the end of the day. I mean, if you have that conversation, then things, the conversation completely changes from a momentum building perspective.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I've been brought in companies too where it's a burning ship and you have to get to profitability as quickly as possible. And it's usually going to include not just attrition, but letting people go. Well, let me know that when we're being hired and say, all right, here's your team. Here's what your budget's going to look like afterwards and what's your plan for both reducing and rebuilding something new. I want to know that up front because I'm capable of doing that. And I have peers that are not. And I have other peers that might be better at just the peers hacking and slashing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So just a follow up to that, if, obviously transparency is important because you got to know what the plan is for the business because your marketing efforts will sort of reflect the plan, right? What are some things that you would do different? And this is just for someone listening in that's not too marketing savvy. What are some things you do different from a company just trying to grow versus a company that has an exit with a timeline, let's say 18 months till exit?
Yeah.
What are things you're going to do different from marketing side? And why is that important?
So some of the things may look very similar from what we produce. Hey, we're still going to produce content on the marketing side. We're still
Yeah.
going to produce ebooks and things can be downloaded. I'd split it into things like, so content that I might produce, whether for large language models to bring us traffic or Google, or for the sales team to send out in newsletters, like that's content. There's content that you'd have that you're trying to drive clicks today to drive sales today or in a very short time period. That's very different than a longer play for content. Like I'm in real estate right now. So you just think about all the big names, Zillow and Redfin. And so this applies both on the consumer side for people searching for homes, as well as agents that are looking for lead providers and co-marketing partners and whatnot. In both cases, it's very, very competitive. Well, you're not just going to come out the door. There's no amount of money that you could spend in the next 6 months to outrank Zillow across the board on either the B2B or the B2C side. And there's like, you're going to start scratching into it. But so you're going to shift from the immediate like goals of clicks to leading indicators. And leading indicators, from my perspective, the CEOs need to know, gosh, the person who can lie to you the most in the company a lot of times is your marketer. I can always find a number that will make my team look like we did the right thing. So we want to agree up front on what the numbers should be. And especially in the later term things that you mentioned, leading indicators. And so I want to get 1 million visits or 10 million visits a month from consumers in New York. Well, to do that, I'm going to first have to get ranked in Google so I can get impressions. How many times does it surface in searches? How many times do we have rankings at any level? Hey, you're not going to rank third until you've ranked 37 and 97. Well, those are all things that can be shown that are leading indicators that you might be tracking for 36 months in some cases before you actually start getting meaningful clicks. And that's just content, because content's a lot easier to explain than email signups and meeting setups and how many people have to come to a webinar or listen to a podcast before they convert. But it applies in every part of industry or go-to-market as well. How many people come to look for your organization at a conference that you guys set up, and they don't just come down and see your company, in the aisle, but they come looking for your company. Like you can actually measure those things if you do the right things. So you have to do indicators up front. And the other part that I'd have there too is like, so many people, I find that the leaders fight for like that last click attribution, like, well, we spoke to them last, therefore we should get credit for them. Well, maybe they were my high school like best friend, and that's how they got into the funnel. And so I care much more about them bringing in things where you talk about contribution, and that's something that is a little bit fuzzier, but you can track it, and it requires more of a research kind of attitude. Hey, customers close, and then you come back and start to touch how did they actually make their decision afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, the attribution piece is something that, it's always a bit of a battle with certain things because I think also with privacy rights with certain things, you can't track as much as you could before. Like there's with the cookies and everything, like it's not as, there's things like retention.com, R2, R2B2, where you can see who's coming to your website, things like that. You can integrate with LinkedIn and some others where it'll show if they, the Google dashboard, the site kit has a lot of that information, but it's not perfect.
It's
I've
not
seen
perfect.
bad data on there too, a lot of times.
Yeah, it's not perfect. And I think the one thing, especially CEOs and CFOs, this will hurt their soul to hear, is that while there is less that's trackable right now, over the past 15 years, Google has become so good at identifying buying behavior that and I have data for this, but the vast majority of deals that you're attributing to paid media are not attributable to paid media at your organization. And I say that because I've stepped into both as the CMO and at the board level and shut off $200,000 a month in B2B ads and seen leads and close rate not change whatsoever. But so Google has become so good at knowing, are you going to buy from this company, that I can't prove this, but you hear a lot of this when you listen to their congressional testimony, because they've been brought up there a good bit, is they have such a good idea. If you're going to close, they put an ad in front of you, knowing that you have a 99% chance you're going to make a decision of buying that company anyways. So their ad budget gets credit for it, but you had a 99% chance you were going to be a customer anyways. So did you really need to spend the $200 on that lead to Google? No, you did not. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that ads aren't valuable. It just means most marketers and most sales teams are using ads, and they're literally just lighting the money on fire. Like if you redeploy it, things fundamentally change.
So maybe a follow-up to that would be for people that have had large Google ad budgets, because, and I can speak for this from personal experience. I've seen companies that, let's say, one trick pony, all their budget is in Google ads, and then it stops working all of a sudden 1 month. And then you're flat footed with your funnel and you're like, oh, what are we going to do now? And you're looking for other options. So going into 2026, if you had to divert some of those funds, if those campaigns aren't working, and obviously there's a whole taking a step back, there's a whole way that we interact with internet now that's different than it was 5 years ago, right? Language models, chat GPT, perplexity search, like it's not the same where you just Google everything, right? So what would you say for, what should we be putting our money into in 2026? Put it that way, make it simple.
It does depend on the stage of your company, but for me,
Sure.
I split things would divert so much of the paid media that most people are relying on right now. Is, first of all, I would say, hey, before you just make a major change, you make a test of 10 to 15% of your budget to prove to yourself that it's a safe bet. It's going to be a safe bet. I'm just telling you, I've done this so many times, but take 15% of your budget and reallocate it to something else. And so from the paid media perspective, you need real data from your sales team, especially if it's a SaaS product, about what parts of your product people are using and what they're not. Not what have you built, but what are they actually logging in and using. And you want to divert about half of that budget you're shifting of that 15% to remarketing ads, specifically driving people to content about how they get more value and raise the fear for things that they're not using that other customers are. You built part of your product that nobody's using. Maybe it's a user interface. Maybe it's something else. If you think there's real value there, use part of that remarketing budget to make your current customers immaculately successful. You will both reduce churn. And then when you see them actually using that new part of the product, that's the best time to ask for reviews and go back to them about how they're doing it. And you will see your referrals increase 2 to 3 times by taking that approach. The second thing is, and no B2B companies do this, you need to start thinking like a media empire. Like, it's not just about traditional marketing. You need to think about how do you produce long form content, video preferable, podcasts, YouTube, and it doesn't take a lot of time. It actually takes less time than traditional marketing to have a marketing team start doing YouTube videos where they're sitting down for 15 or 20 minutes once or twice a month with your chief product officer, with your product managers, and asking them questions, and then going and creating that's good videos. Because not only can you provide a huge bit of content that's deeper the funnel, that's really useful, you can also produce content where you cannot require that product manager to share stuff on LinkedIn. You will get 50 to 100 times more views if they share something on LinkedIn than if you put it on LinkedIn and run your own ad budget behind it, because of the algorithm favors people over companies. So when you make those people successful and look better, they will tell the stories that they want to tell about your company and what you're solving, and that will help your company grow.
And, I can definitely agree with that, because I've talked to some PR people and comms people where they're building out, they've realized that the micro influencer level is better, especially with algorithms. And so creating micro influencers within the company, creating a PR kit that people in the company can use to have sort of that through line with all of their posting, where they're consistent with how they promote or talk about the brand or the kind of language they're using, and having those internal kits, like basically a media kit for these people to use, makes it easier for them. So they're not just posting something that doesn't align with the company branding or something, or it doesn't look good, or that little selfie. A little bit of media savviness or PR comms education helps to help your team as well, right? Because now everyone's customer facing with socials. It's insane.
Everybody should be customer facing, but most B2B companies still don't think that way. So many are scared about helping support the people on their team, individual contributors, managers, because they're concerned that if I help that person get seen more on LinkedIn, as an example, that they're going to get poached by somebody else. Well, yeah, they might, but it's that whole thing about if you don't develop your team, somebody else will. And
Yep.
so, like, do you want a bunch of C-level players? No, you should be hiring people that want to do well. But at the same level, like, either that or if you're supporting them as a company, even if they're doing it, you're just going to make it that much better. And it's just something that too many companies haven't done it, because if I went back even 5 years ago, like, to go to the typical marketing team and say, you have to now start producing company or producing content at the company level as if you're a media empire, it wasn't possible. But now with AI, I can use Cast Magic, I can use Opus Clips or Minvo to repurpose content. You can set up a workflow in your company that a junior person can take and repurpose all the content, and the AI will actually help hold anything that's created more true to the brand than what you could have done with a large team 5 years ago. But
Yeah.
but even that, like, to your point about PR, like, I have a friend here in Atlanta, Stephanie. She owns a PR agency named SoGrow PR. Like, before, I would have gone to them for press releases and placements in major publications. Now I'm going to go to them and either say, I want to bring you in to teach my team how to build this internal and have more of a retainer to keep us true if we want to produce ourselves. Or I'm going to go to them now. I'm not going to go to one of these agencies that only does podcasts. I'm going to go to them because they're a PR company that's been doing it for 20 years and say, here's what I want. And I want you to do it not just for the company, but for this number of individuals within the company. And that's something that they and others shine at doing, but it's different than what PR would have looked like in the past, which is also why your head of marketing, your head of sales is going to often look different than the person that would have been put in that role 5 years ago. As the founder, to your point, especially a technical founder, they think about PR as, how do I get TechCrunch to write an article about me? Yeah, great. That's a one-hit wonder at that point. I would take 15 mid-level kind of placements with what I could do with it, or 10 podcast interviews for somebody on our product company, talking about it much more than a single article in something like TechCrunch or Financial Times.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And we're seeing that a lot more. And I mean, I think it's also a lower cost effort in many ways in terms of doing it, because, they're already working for you and you can kind of leverage that, right? And they want to build their own personal brands as well. So it kind of helps them build their audience, helping them with the content and so on as well, like giving them resources to help them be successful. And I know for us, when we're looking to hire now enterprise salespeople, building sales or marketing teams, like social media presence is now one of the screening factors. Right. It's one of the filters now in terms of, do they have a following on LinkedIn or other platforms? Are they active in social media? Are they media savvy that they can potentially make content for you that would be leverage or help with social selling, right?
Right.
And it's definitely something is becoming more and more important. I'd say if there's two perfect enterprise candidates right now, and one has 10,000 followers, the other one is not really on LinkedIn, that person's getting the job just because they know there's more channels that they can be participating in.
I could see that.
Really, for 2026, things to keep in mind if you're listening in, right?
Yeah, I could see that. Well, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, for like, I would imagine for candidates at the executive level, it's like,
Yeah.
I know great people at insert any C-level position, at companies. And then, I go look at how many, connections they have on LinkedIn, and they have 750 or 1,200. And I'm like, the difference between that and the people that are getting promoted that are maybe not even as good, but they've got 5,000, 7,000 connections out there. It's like, well, that's who's getting chosen because that's who's getting seen that much more out there. So I can see, to your point, that applies very much I'm bringing in an outside salesperson as well.
Yeah, I mean, I use sales as an example because it's straightforward, makes sense. Of course, you want to have them have big networks, right? But I think it applies to many positions now, and it's becoming more and more important. And it's for people that are listening in. It's like you need to start focusing on your personal brand. And it's kind of wild to me that now we're all having to be on video. Like, you asked me 5 years ago if I would have had a podcast, I would be like, no, I don't want to do that. So here we are, and we're getting out there, and it's important, right? Another thing that's important, just a final maybe topic for us, is finding communities and mentorships, right? And so I think having a trusted community is important, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that because I know you've been a big part of that.
Yeah, I find most senior executives do not have either peers around them in the same roles, especially at the same size companies, but they definitely do not have peers at not outside of their company from other roles within the organization. And so, like, as a go-to-market person, like there's Pavilion, which is a big
Yeah.
international group with franchises. But like outside of that, if you look at organizations that are used for executives, they all cater towards CEOs, operators, or the operator founder. There's EO, there's YPN, and the Vistage. Well, what happens for the CMO or the CPO or anything like that? And so, like, I'm part of an organization that's based here in Atlanta. We're now in multiple cities, but called CEO Netweavers, where like we literally just saw this both one, it's lonely at the top, but also how much value do I get not showing up to those posturing meetings we all have? And so it's like, try to create like a mastermind yourself. You can do that, of people that are in industries like yours, not competitors, but it's like you should have two CFOs and a CRO. Like you guys should be getting together twice a month just to share all the internal stuff, or have an organization like ours. Cause like the value that I get by being able to go to people and say, hey, here's a problem I have. They're not competing for my job. They don't have, we're not doing the internal politics. Like almost nobody has that, but that's helped me so much over the years. And it's like mentors are great, but there's something different when like you have peers around you that you can ask questions, or you think to ask a question that you never would have thought of because somebody else brought a problem that they're going through.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. And I mean, being able to bounce ideas off in a safe space is important for anybody, I think. So if you
Yeah, and
don't
we all
have
have different experiences. We
yeah,
sold the company during COVID. I have done a lot of corporate transactions, as you mentioned, and yet we had a funding round that fell through that became an acquisition, and I was kind of at a loss. We thought it was just coming off the table, and I was one of the two executives driving the acquisition of the company. And I called somebody, and it was a peer in an organization who had been, I don't know, 30 years in PE, 10 years retired, and laid everything out. Here's what's going through. Without even blinking, Jay just went, boom, here's what you need to do. And he gave me, here's your next three steps. And then literally just coached me as a friend. And we ended up selling that company. I'd say largely because I had somebody I had been establishing a relationship with, not a posturing, not a paid relationship, but just a friend relationship at a peer level that when I needed it, I could call up for a specific thing that he was skilled in that I wasn't.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is we can't know everything. And, if you're trying to do that, you're not going to be successful regardless, right? There's just too much to know now, especially from the marketing side where it's like, there's so many tools, there's so many things going on. It's become very complex. And I think that's maybe also part of the issue why there's that misalignment with the CEOs is like they don't even know what you guys do anymore. It's wild. Like just how much different things you got to worry about. I mean, tactically, right? Like it's insane. So anyways, great conversation. I really liked having you on and we could definitely talk marketing probably for the rest of the day if we kept on. So stay tuned for more maybe.
All right. Thanks for having me, John.
Thanks. All right.